Hi everyone, welcome back to latest episode of the Precursive Perspective. Very excited about today's episode. I've got a bit of a legend of the sector in the house. Jeroen Bos, who is the Senior Vice President of Professional Services at Bizzdesign. How are you, sir? Welcome.
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me. How are you?
I'm very good. I'm very good. I love your like feng shui background behind you. I think everyone always has like nicer backgrounds than I do with this weird painting. But how's your week?
It's a plastic plant, by the way.
Oh, is it?
Not so
Nice.
feng shui, but
Yeah, it doesn't really move, does it? So
no, it
that's
doesn't.
fine.
No,
All
no.
right, cool. We'll give our listeners and viewers a little bit of background about yourself and your career.
Sure. Based in Utrecht in the Netherlands, I've always been in professional services for like 25 odd years. So that also tells you my age. Um, Always in SaaS, also different types of industries, smaller companies, larger companies. But also I've always had this passion about project management, service delivery, and gradually grew my career from being a project manager to a program manager to leading and building professional services teams.
Very cool. Awesome. Well, you look well. You don't look like you've been doing 25 years in PS. Some look frazzled. You look
Yeah,
fresh.
yeah.
So there we
Okay,
go.
thanks.
So you must be doing something right. I think something that you and I talked a little bit about when you were over in London was I think kind of how I think the increasing importance in the role of services in the modern go-to-market, right? And it now being a sort of a key, not sort of, it is a key dependency in GTM effectiveness versus like a nice to have.
Mhm.
Um, and I was excited to get you on because I think you've got a very strong commercial mindset, which is important in this market. But I'd love to just start with like, what's your perspective on like how the role of services is evolving like in the current market?
Like I said, I started out as a project manager, and back in those days, PS was an afterthought, right? So, oh, we'll
Yeah.
slap on a few days of professional services, go make the customer successful. Like nowadays, that has changed over time. So, moving away from being an afterthought and a cost center to actually being an enabler of sustainable ARR growth. That really defines a differentiating position for PS as opposed to how it used to be. So instead of it's just being about help us get started, it is much more about help us solve our business challenges. So I think that's definitely a change in how PS is positioned and being perceived, but also it shows the true value out of PS if done right.
Yeah. I think it also speaks to the maturity of the services function in understanding that solving those problems isn't a one-time thing. It isn't help me get started and suddenly you've solved all my problems.
No,
Because that's just not how, unfortunately, problems work.
no,
Right.
always.
So I think we'll sort of cover that because I mean it goes beyond like you say like that initial implementation, and you yourself like have leaned into I think the commercial side of things well because that's not the natural starting point for a lot of people in services, right? You're starting in delivery, and then as you move up the leadership ladder, you've got to be a lot more commercial.
Yeah.
How do you think about this and the tactics that you use to ensure that services is driving sales?
Well, someone we both know very well, Brad Jacobs, once told me that in SaaS, we are all in sales. And that really resonated with me because what it means to me, if you do it right, is that professional services teams play a role in selling into net new customers as well as into your existing customer base. So you have to have a much more commercial mindset also in PS. So for net new customers, for example, or prospects, it's all about addressing the risk. As a prospect moves through the buying cycle, their focus shifts from features, functions, then it moves to cost and benefits. But towards the end of the sales cycle, it's all about evaluating risk. And the fear of messing up tends to be bigger than the fear of missing out. And that's why professional services can play a pivotal part in helping sales close that deal by addressing that risk.
Yeah.
But it's not just for prospects. I also think for existing customers, you have to have tactics to help drive more sales. So you have to look at it across the entire customer lifecycle. And it's not just about post-sale implementation. We can also support pre-sales teams with complex POCs or POVs, or help customer success in identifying upsell and cross-sell. it is all those things combined that I think where PS needs to have a commercial mindset and can help move sales forward.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, sales is often the dirty word, right? It's
Yes.
sort of like it's and there's a few ways to like actually get around that. If you've got a team and then they're not embracing that, like commercial acumen, commercial mindset, business development, like are all ways to frame it, or just simply like when you're working with customers, it's about solving problems. When you
Mhm.
solve problems for people, they are more inclined to want to work with you
Yes.
and and fund those changes. It's kind of as simple as that. Like we're getting paid for the problems that we're solving. I think
Exactly.
I think on the front end though, um, like you said, the biggest issue that I think more immature services organizations like and the market in general doesn't fully appreciate is that like you're talking about the risk
Mhm.
for many companies, the number one risk that they're concerned about is not you, the vendor, and your services. It's their dysfunction. It's them as a
Correct.
company, and
Correct.
right, and that's been exposed over the 3, 6, 9, 12, 24 month sales cycle, right? Where probably someone in there is going, "Do we really work this way? Like we can't make a decision." So we're going to spend $1 million on software here and 500K on services if you've got a nice revenue attach rate. And we're like, well, hold on, it's not they're the problem, we're the problem, right?
And it's all about servicing that risk to the customer and also being able to articulate how you can de-risk their daily business.
Yeah, I agree, 100%. I think the best salespeople and then the best commercially minded services people lean into that, don't they? They lean into the risk. It's like this is a risk that you're not thinking about, but here's how we're going to help you to address that.
Correct. And being transparent and not sugarcoating it and explaining what we've learned from other customers, what our best practices are to highlight that risk, but also how you can address it. That's what builds trust. And
Hmm.
that's also when PS can become more of a selling engine for in-flight projects because you've now become the customer's trusted advisor.
Yeah. Yeah. Cool. Love it. So you've got a very interesting gig where you are. We chatted about it.
Yes.
Few things, few plates to spin. Services taking on a greater role and importance in your company. So sort of a two-part question. One, what's driving that? And then two, given that, how do you think about aligning your organization and strategy with the company strategy?
Sure. So what was happening at Bizzdesign is that we've now merged with two of our competitors. So it's now three companies merging into one, three product sets merging into one. And what it means that the breadth and depth of our product suite is increasingly growing. So we have more customer use cases that we can address. We have more features and functions available to our customer base. But it also means that PS has to evolve with that go-to-market model. So what it concretely means for PS is that we in some cases have to redefine the service portfolio, make sure it's mapped to our customers' most common use cases, but also take into account that we service different types of customers who have different levels of maturity. So you have to take into account what do I offer, which type of services do I offer to which type of customers.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I like that. That segmentation is often done is too often done just like on a proxy of like ARR or size, like, oh, they're SMB, they're mid-market. But as you say, like client maturity of where they are at with your solution is a great mental model to structure with customers. I also think that sometimes it's difficult for vendors to because you serve customers in different industries and different segments, like you've got the core value proposition of your product, but sometimes it's difficult to articulate like the outcomes and the value that every customer, it's not always consistent because those clients talk about it in different ways, they're in different industries, etc. So actually that customer maturity with Bizzdesign or with Precursive is a really good way sometimes of segmenting. So that's a tip for listeners is like if you've got your like your early stage adopter, you've got your intermediary and you've got your expert. And what do you need to do to transition the users, so the super users, the end users, to transition them into different stages, because oftentimes that will help to drive more value from your solution and more outcomes to the business, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay.
One of the first things I always do when I look at a service portfolio is, do we have a customer maturity model?
Yep.
Do we look at people, process, technology? Where are customers in their life cycle in terms of maturity? Because like you said, that really drives the right type of services. Otherwise, you're just shooting in the dark, or you're doing a one size fits all, and that never worked well.
Yeah. Yeah. We went down the rabbit hole on that. Like we've got this, you've seen it, right? You've seen the high
Mhm.
level one. Like behind that, it's super in depth.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, how do we, it forced us as well to sort of define what does it take from going from something that's very ad hoc and unorganized to something that's repeatable. And actually, do we believe that that's like it's genuinely this in the product, or is it this plus this, or is it this plus this? And yeah, it's that's really interesting. So bringing different companies together, help us understand the scope of what's been happening, and like how do you, when you're integrating multiple businesses, how do you reshape the services org as a result?
So it's quite an undertaking, and it still is. We're in the middle of the merger from an operational perspective, and while it makes perfect sense from a product perspective to bring these three products together and to combine their technical capabilities for PS and for any other customer-facing organization, it is not that straightforward. You have different roles and profiles, different ways of working, different portfolios, delivery methodologies, measures of success. A lot is involved in like merging those three customer-facing organizations into one. And the big question is like, where do you begin? The answer is relatively straightforward in the sense that you start with the customer and you work backwards. So I first looked at what is a go-to-market model? What are our common use cases? What does that mean for the mission of professional services? And then what do we need to put in place to achieve that? So the first 3 to 4 months, I individually interviewed every single PS team member, as well as the sales, pre-sales, and customer success leadership teams. And ultimately, that led to 5 strategic initiatives that will help shape the future of PS. So that's how I approached it. And now the next step is how to operationalize all those initiatives.
Right. There's a lot of talking.
Yeah, it's a lot of work.
Yeah. 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 Okay. Had you done it before?
Well, whenever I step into a new role as a PS leader, I always interview the team members individually to get a
Mm.
feel of what's working well, what's not working well. But in this particular case, it's also like mapping, as much as we want to map customer maturity, also the difference in maturity between those three PS organizations. So there's an added dimension to it to take into account.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Very interesting. Like harmonizing that maturity over time is kind of one of the barometers of, will be one of the barometers of success for you, I would imagine.
Correct. It starts with process harmonization. You have to
Yeah.
define what does good look like.
Yeah.
And that includes standardizing the operating model,
Yeah.
setting clear quantitative and qualitative performance indicators. And that's just a starting point.
Yeah. Yeah. And also, I guess, like people don't always know what those words mean, right? Like people can work in services and know not have a clue what an operating model means.
Correct.
A lot of people who run companies can actually have that, and it's not that that's not like it's a bad thing. You don't need to like know that it's kind of how we do stuff, right? Like that's really what it means.
That's what it's going.
It's like it's a fancy word, but oh, you mean how we do stuff, right? How we sell, who we sell to, how we deliver, like how we do stuff. Okay, yeah, operating model, got it. And that's why like McKinsey's like been making money for like 30 years. But the just to expand on the culture piece,
Yes.
right? So you've got different geographies, you've got different companies. Like cultural harmonization, in my experience, takes time and can be fractious.
Yes.
Is that something where you sort of have like how do you just this is an add-on question like discuss how do you go about fostering that culture? I'm just curious.
So I'll end with the culture piece because I think
Okay.
there's a few things that precede before you can look at the culture. Like obviously, culture is the most important thing to make all of it work. I'll get back to that in a second. But
Yeah.
I spoke about the operating model, like what does good look like, and once there is this vision of like where are we heading, what does good look like, then it's all about how do we manage the expertise that we have today. So you look at knowledge management. How do you capture, how do you curate, and how do you redistribute tribal knowledge and best practices to so it benefits the largest possible set of team members? So I started with setting up a skills matrix that describes relevant hard skills and soft skills. So we can use it as a baseline for two things. One, a business continuity, where do we have knowledge gaps and how do we close them? But also to help support career progression. So that's number one. That's for the overall for the team, setting a boundary and a baseline. Then secondly, what's really important is leadership development, because dependent upon the maturity of the teams and that of your leadership team, you have to continuously invest in evolving your leaders from the entrepreneurial level to the general manager, player coach capacity, and then eventually to a strategist. So if all of these components, if you have an idea about that, then culture to me is the connecting tissue, because the effectiveness of all of this is highly dependent upon like a joint sense of purpose. And you have to be really able to articulate what the behavioral principles are that are important for the effectiveness of the team. In my case, I think intellectual honesty, cross-functional collaboration, having a customer-first mindset, and extreme ownership. Those are the four key traits I look for on my leadership team. And if you're able to articulate that and live and breathe that, that's how you build culture across these three organizations.
Okay. Yeah, that's interesting. Our core value in my company is put customers first and actually mean it.
And actually mean it is an important objective, yes.
Right. That is the sentence that you picked up on the second part of the sentence, right? Like, I'll tell you the story behind that, right? So a friend of mine works for Facebook. So I'm not a fan of Facebook, just to be clear. I used to use it. I used to be a DJ and run some parties in London so when Facebook came out, that was how we invited everyone to the party. So that was my Facebook journey. But I found it incredibly boring to be like posting a picture of a steak that I was cooking. But I didn't think that was very interesting for the world. But I digress. I went to the Facebook offices in New York, and this is about it's about eight years ago or something like that. My friend worked there, and you go in and they had this wall where everyone writes on the wall. It's all very cool, and and there was a poster that said move fast and break things. Right. And so I was going around the office and they had this, I basically went in for the free food, and I said and I clocked the poster. So the next year I go back, I always used to go back in the summer and go and see my friend, and the poster that was gone, and there was a new poster and it said move fast with stable infrastructure. Right. And I said to my buddy, I'm like, that's changed. It used to say move fast and break things, and he was like, yeah, we broke too much stuff. And I was like, right. I was like, does any of this stuff that's on, no offense to people at Facebook, but like all these posters on a wall, how much does it truly like manifest, right? Because you can put it on a wall, right, and it doesn't actually make it so, right? So I think that cultural piece is so important. I think there's an element of when you can get people to buy into the vision of what you're trying to do for the customers, that needs to be optimistic, because if it's optimistic, people are like, I want to get after something, right? Like you can have like, yeah, we deliver well, we're on budget, we're on time, we're on budget. It's not very aspirational, right? Like in my business, we work with visionary services leaders. Now, that doesn't mean that they're like, the Steve Jobs of their profession, but they have a vision, and it's all anchored around this services-led growth strategy. So they have a vision. They want to be on the, they don't want to be just pigeonholed as delivery. They want to be the growth engine, as an example. That's aspirational. And that means that I can get people to buy into that easier. And I think what is underappreciated about culture is it drives retention. And yourself, I'm sure that over the years, if you have a retained PS team over a period of time, the throughput and the output of that team is gets massively impacted. It's just, you can really churn through it, and it's an amazing experience versus, you don't have the culture, you don't have the aspirations. It's all Big Brother. It's all the wrong metrics, the wrong attitude, the wrong culture. And then basically people are like, you don't think I'm an asset, you think I'm a commodity, I'm out of here, right? So yeah, okay. Rant over.
Interesting stuff.
So So like just finally then, like when you look back, I always find that when you look back, startups are like dog years, right? Like you do a year and it's like 7 years. So like looking back, given this is your first kind of big M&A integration, what would you say are some of the key learnings?
Well, there's one key learning that I took away in my first 8 months here is although I spend a lot of time assessing the maturity level of the different PS organizations, interviewing all the individual team members. In hindsight, I should have done that more thoroughly for the sales, pre-sales, and CSM organizations as well, because ultimately they are also recipients of the PS strategy. And if your evolutionary pace is either too fast or too slow, it simply won't stick. So luckily in this case, there were no major issues, but I did realize that I need to spend more time next time in also assessing maturity for the peer customer facing organizations.
Yeah. Yeah, that echoes what we found in that benchmark, the Services Delivery Alliance benchmark, was that I think it was, get my numbers right. I think it's circa 80% of services organizations were basically had an updated strategy and were transforming, right? No, sorry. 80% of services organizations were transforming,
Mhm.
and only 40% felt that their strategy was clearly understood by the other functions.
And then it falls flat.
Bingo. There you go. 100%. To exactly link to your point, right? Is like um it's what's most important internally as much as it is with the clients, and how do you marry those things up.
Correct.
The When you talked earlier about services portfolio,
Mhm.
and you talked about the importance of like understanding the customer maturity and what they want. Um, what are they engaging with? Like in your, what types of services do you find these in your markets that people really engage with the most? Is it subscriptions? Is it value engineering? What sorts of things?
Well, again, this goes back to the customer maturity. It differs. We have a customer base that are just getting started with enterprise architecture. They come from either a Miro board or Excel sheets, and now they have this fancy tool. So in those cases, it's more about implementation, like help me solve some concrete business challenges. That's the first like bucket of customers they look for. Onboarding and implementation. That's still a thing with our product. Then, secondly, subscription-based is more and more in the forefront. We have a lot of customers who require technical expertise on an ongoing basis. So they're looking for operational support, really to augment internal expertise or to compensate for the lack thereof. And then the third group of customers, and those are getting like a bigger and bigger chunk of my overall customer base. They're looking for strategic consulting. They want more assistance with business transformation planning. So it's not just about the tool. The tool is a means to an end. It's more about the process. It's more about best practices. That's more what I call consulting with a capital C. So those are one of those three things is usually what our customers are looking for.
Right.
So that means that subscription-based services, outcome-driven services based on use cases are increasingly in demand.
Okay. And curious then about like how you, because that's demanding, isn't it? Like consulting with a capital C is demanding, because you can have your solution architects, solution consultants who've been, for everyone, they always start on the more technical end of the spectrum, right? And then over time, everyone builds that business acumen and that customer acumen, mainly, I think, due to experience and
Mhm.
not due to really great structured L&D training or training, because no one has the time to get around to it. We'd all love to, but it never really manifests. Is that fair? Do you sort of have to then go and actually maybe recruit people in who have that, or are you
Yeah,
repurposing people? How do you get to that
it's a little
consulting
bit
with the
of both. So
right?
we have two profiles. We have a technical consultant and a business consultant. And
Mhm.
obviously, business consultancy is more towards the consulting with a capital C. Technical consultant is more data migration, integrations, complex configurations, more really the hands-on keyboard stuff.
Right.
So we're doing two things. Like based on the market demand, based on our go-to-market strategy, we specifically source for either a technical or a business-oriented role or
Yep.
profile, but also to the skills matrix, as mentioned before, we're looking to evolve and help people progress their careers from moving from a technical to more business consultancy profile by identifying like, what are the gaps in your expertise and knowledge we need to address, and how can we help you get there through a development plan. So I agree, in practice, there is always too little time to focus on that, but we are definitely making a conscious effort to spend non-billable time on professional development.
Okay. Interesting. Yeah. Interesting. I'm thinking about like also how we did it. I think um one of the steps I took was I was like, I want to get like I'm very fortunate with this podcast now, which was started as a whim in COVID, right? I think, my wife and I had enough of homeschooling and trying to figure out which of the pubs was going to open first.
Yes.
And I was like, I'm just going to do a podcast and chat to people. But it sort of turned into this means by which I get amazing amounts of like intelligence, but also, the community that we've built in the Services Delivery Alliance gives you a level of insight that most won't have. I'm actually trying to figure out how to best expose that to my team. Some of my team's in it, obviously, some help to facilitate it, but actually lower down the levels. So one of the things I think we're going to end up doing is creating like a hypos stream to it so that the services teams can send like solution architects, solution consultants, like into a learning track, and then we
Yeah.
get people like you, hopefully, to coach them a little bit like Pavilion, or what was it called, Revenue Club, Revenue Collective, or something, the one with
Yes.
Sam Jake.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so they have a similar thing, right? You go to like Crow School or whatever it is, right?
Yeah.
And something like that, because I think that's the you talked about having like your lieutenants, like in the leadership team, who've got this leadership, entrepreneurial mindset, strategic mindset. You kind of need, the frontline teams to have that, because then you've got like an army of people, and you've got like succession planning so that you're not
Yes, exactly.
so exposed to like, a good manager gets poached, right? But
Exactly. Yeah, so
okay.
both at the IC level for the team, but also at the leadership level, you have to have a mix of profiles.
Yeah.
You have to have V-shaped individuals in your team who know a little bit about everything. You have to
Yeah.
have T-shaped individuals who are domain experts. And if you don't have that mix, you're exposing yourself to a single point of
Okay.
failure.
Was V-shaped? Is that like they work out?
Yeah, could be that. But what I mean by V-shaped is you know a little bit about everything, and one
Okay.
of the topics you know a little bit more about. So you only go
Right.
in depth for like one or two topics, and but you can have more of a business conversation with customers about the overall product set or the overall services portfolio, how we can help you get from A to B. Whereas
Okay.
the T-shaped individual tends to be more of a technical profile, so you have a domain expertise on specific use cases or features and functions. You can do complex configurations. That's sort of much more focused.
Okay. Got it. Cool. I didn't know that. Awesome. Um, what do I want to cover now? So, I mean, a big part of it right now, I think, is in the market. What I'm seeing is like people really tuning into the need to get away from like packaging hours, right?
Mhm.
And we sell a bucket of hours, right? Or just add sales, just add, 1,000 hours to the SOP and we'll figure it out. To like, how do we better like package that expertise, right? And then deliver that and unlock the needs and the value that we're going to drive with customers. But why in your experience does the structuring of those offerings, the packaging, play such an important role, do you think?
Well, one of the things that you, at least in my experience, that I see a lot is if you only do body shopping or packages based on time materials, is here's a bucket of days, call us if you need us. The actual consumption of that budget is slowing down. It tapers off really quickly, so it inflates your backlog. Nothing's really happening. Utilization is low, but more importantly, customers are not getting any real value out of your services engagement. And now that we're changing, especially in SaaS companies, to focus on sustainable ARR growth, it also impacts your service portfolio because there's a really interesting balance that you have to master. From the customer's perspective, there's an increasing demand to do like use case based, outcome driven offerings, really shorten the time to value. But internally, the expectation is you have to have higher margins, you have to have better scalability, you have to maximize adoption. That's now your top priority. So that really drives a different type of service portfolio. And that's why I think packaging your offerings in terms of like, here's the use case, this is the best practice, this is how we get you to success, Mr. or Mrs. Customer, is way more important now.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that backlog inflation is something that should be like a bumper sticker, shouldn't it? For like, uh,
I have
but
it on
that's
my car's bumper sticker.
yeah, yeah, backlog inflation. It's funny, isn't it? Because some people are like, oh, that's not funny. You'll often hear like oh, how's our backlog? What's our backlog looking like? What do we think the backlog's a sign of? And some's like, well, it's the future. It's the future revenue, right? It's the future. That's going to mean that I'm not pinging up on the P&L for like losing loads of money in 3 months' time because I know we've got some revenue to deliver. But per your point, it could all just sit there and nothing could happen. And
Yeah.
then you do ping up on the P&L. It's like, oh, well, we thought we had all of this stuff, but actually we haven't done anything.
I keep explaining to the CEO and the CFO in quarterly business reviews, like, yes, we have 1 million of service backlog, but if it's consisting mostly of body shopping, it's inflated backlog. It is fictitious backlog. Nothing's happening.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah. Okay, interesting. And then finally, you've talked about you talked earlier about the importance of like getting closer to sales and really understanding their viewpoints and interviewing them as a part of this whole exercise. I guess my question is when you've got this portfolio that you have now,
Mm.
is do you have dedicated services sellers for that as a function or as a motion? And do you find that is a valuable thing to have in the teams that you've been in?
We don't have this dedicated service sales function today. I think ideally it is a key differentiator, especially when subscription-based service and managed services become the more dominant offerings. For now, though, having a outcome-driven and use case-based portfolio, if you combine that with proper enablement for sales, it is, I'll say, adequate. It works to an extent. Still needs regional service leaders to step in and help do a more complex sale. It still needs us to do objection handling and qualifying the actual type of service in some cases. So it makes it easier. I think the starting point is having a clear and well-defined portfolio. That's step number one. Step number two is you have to have proper sales enablement. So I always try to take ownership of like how do we need to enable sales on the services pieces. But ideally, I agree. A dedicated service sales function is really a key differentiator if you want to make a PS a profit center and really drive more revenue.
Yeah. But then again, you could argue that that's the antithesis of what we've been talking about, which is sustainable ARR, right? Which is in some organizations, do you really want to be a profit center or do you want to just reinvest that back into growth that's about maximizing ARR, right? And run more of a TCM based strategy? Because
Yeah.
I think there's just something potentially inherently flawed about quota carrying services sales professionals who care about their quota. I think that just the cultural piece, like that, what that leaks into it, it takes a very strong services sales leader to ensure that it's the right services that are being sold in the right way. And it doesn't, some of that, you know, maybe the incorrect behaviors creep in. I feel like where it's going to head personally is, which is a little bit what we're doing. We're creating a solutions team. That
Mhm.
solutions team is going to have forward deployed solutions consultants in it. Partly we're calling them that to be fashionable in the market, really blunt, right? Like, because that's what our customers are calling these things. In
Yeah.
my client base, I've got probably 20% of the clients are now doing that. So it's like, oh, okay, cool. You're doing that as well. Everyone's doing it a different way, right?
Mhm.
Just to be clear. Um, but that team is all staffed with people who worked in services, who worked in delivery. So they never came in to it via a sales route. It was like their delivery, they're going to be all about the outcomes and actually what you can do and what you. It's because a lot of it with I think the sales element is almost as much about what you can't do. Like you shouldn't be doing that. You got to be brave enough to tell a client that's a bad idea.
Yes.
Um, Cool. Well, listen, I think I really appreciate you taking the time to talk and to prep. So that's very clear. So thank you ever so much because I know how busy you are. I think there's a few for me kind of go, going back through this. I think the kind of the language that I pick up from you is like that there's this. I think we talked about it actually prior to starting is like in services, it's always evolving, it's always moving, it's always a moving target. You're never done. And therefore, you have to be very clear about what your vision is, but that vision and that mission evolves over time and has
Yes.
to keep pace with not just what you're doing internally from a GTM perspective, but the world of your customers and potentially the world of your customers,
Hmm.
right? Um, and I think that just reframing the way that people think about services from like an outside in perspective, that if you have that, you can then come back to the org design, come back to the services portfolio, come back to the people, come back to the skills and the sort of the red thread that runs through that is that mission, and that mission informs things like strategy and culture and all of these types of things. So really enjoyed the perspective. Hopefully you had a good time.
I did, definitely, yes.
Very good. Anything exciting happening for the weekend? Are you going to drink some of that wine that you picked up on your
I
trip?
probably will open up a nice bottle of wine, yes, because I've bought too many and I need to consume some of it to not
Awesome.
inflate my backlog.
Nice one, man. Thanks ever so much for coming on.
Thanks, Jonathan. Speak soon.
Cool.
Ciao, bye bye.
Bye.